You know what's funny? How long it takes you to realize that sometimes, love isn't enough. Not because you stop loving the person, but because they stop showing up for you the way you needed them to. I used to think that if I just held on long enough, if I just loved hard enough, things would go back to how they were when we first met. The laughter, the late-night talks, the way their eyes lit up when they saw me walking into a room. But life has a way of teaching you that people can change without ever actually leaving. I remember sitting alone one night, staring at my phone, wondering why I still had hope after all this time. I was tired, so tired, of waiting for a text that might never come, of making excuses for why they hadn't called, of pretending like everything was fine when inside I was breaking apart. And yet, there I was, still holding on, still hoping, still believing that maybe, just maybe, they'd wake up one day and remember how much I meant to them. But here's the thing about waiting. It only works if the other person is moving toward you too. If they're standing still, or worse, walking away. It doesn't matter how loud your heart beats or how many times you whisper their name. You can't force someone to fight for you if they've already decided not to try. It wasn't like it started off bad. We were happy once. Truly, madly, deeply happy. They were my person and I was theirs. We built a world together. One filled with dreams, promises, and the kind of love that felt like it could outlast anything. But somewhere along the way, things shifted. The calls became shorter. The texts fewer. The warmth in their voice faded into something colder, more distant. And I kept trying to fix it. I kept bending myself into whatever shape I thought they needed me to be, thinking that if I gave them enough space or changed this part of myself or made myself smaller somehow, they'd come back to me. But they didn't. They pulled away little by little until I barely recognized the person they'd become. And honestly, I barely recognized myself either. I had turned into someone who lived for the scraps of attention they threw my way. Someone who apologized for needing them too much, for wanting more, for hurting too loudly. I became a shadow of who I was when I first fell in love with them. And the worst part, they knew. They knew how much I was hurting. They saw me falling apart and instead of catching me they let me crash. Still they'd say sweet things, "You're my person. I love you. No one will ever understand me like you do." But words mean nothing when they aren't backed up by action. Empty promises don't hold weight anymore when you've heard them too many times before. So finally I had to make a choice. Not between staying or going, but between surviving or slowly dying inside this version of us. And even though every fiber of my being screamed at me to stay, to keep fighting, to believe in the possibility of us one last time, chose me. It wasn't dramatic. There was no big argument, no slamming doors, no tears, at least not then. It was quiet. Just stop. I stopped chasing. I stopped waiting. I stopped begging them to care. I matched their energy, gave them space, and eventually I let go. Because if someone wants to drift, you have to let them. You can't cling to someone who's already halfway gone. Letting go didn't erase the pain. It just gave me space to feel it fully without distraction. Without the false hope of a future that clearly wasn't mine to have. I mourned the loss of what we were, and what we could have been. I mourned the girl I was when I loved them so fiercely, and I mourned the version of them I used to believe in. But slowly, something began to shift. The silence they left behind started to feel less like abandonment and more like freedom. I remembered who I was before I tied my worth to someone else's presence. I remembered that I am whole on my own, that I don't need anyone to complete me, to validate me, to remind me that I'm enough. And now, as I stand here on the other side of all that hurt, I want to tell them something. Not because I expect a response, but because I owe it to myself to say it out loud. I hope you find happiness. Truly do. I hope you find someone who sees you the way I did, who fights for you the way I did, who loves you with everything they have, even when you forget to love yourself. I hope they give you everything I couldn't, or maybe just everything you were too afraid to ask for from me. 'Cause I was your person. I was the one who stayed through the storms, who believed in you even when you didn't believe in yourself, who loved you even when you made it hard to love you. I was the one who showed up again and again, even when you didn't. And maybe that's the saddest part. Not that you didn't love me back, but that you let me love you harder than you were willing to love me. So thank you for teaching me that love isn't just about feeling something. It's about showing up. It's about effort. It's about choosing each other every single day, even when it's hard. Even when you're tired. Especially when you're tired. And thank you for giving me the strength to walk away. For reminding me that I deserve more than half-hearted affection, more than empty words, more than someone who only shows up when it's convenient. You taught me how to love, yes, but more importantly you taught me how to leave. Because sometimes the most powerful act of love is letting go. And now I'm finally free.